Hello, Sojourners. This is Jonathan with Sojourners Awake, and this is a session planner document for game masters. So if you are planning a session and you want to have a nice little format to follow, you can use this. A little word of advice, if you print it out, go to print, and it's about 64 pages, so it's quite a bit of information. What I do is I print in double-sided, and I go to more settings, and I just do the pages per sheet. I do something like 4, and there you can see that I have all the information. It's nice and it's gonna be smaller, but at least you have everything on less pages. Or you could just print the document out 64 pages. That's fine too. But anyway, let's begin. Number one, before each session, ask yourself, what is the quest? You just need to remind yourself, what do the players want? What's their motivation? What is the big question about the adventure? Just as the most recent example in my game today, the question was, will the players get to the magical cello? Or will they help Prince Dollar Dinner get to the magical cello? And of course, the question wasn't answered. Not yet really was the answer because the quest is ongoing. But it's always a good idea to really remind yourself at the beginning of a session planning to remind yourself of the player's quest. Okay? Now, building a location is very important. This is based on the principle that every game has a border and a transition. And a border basically tells you where the game begins and where the game ends. The best way to do that is in a location. For example, today, the location was in a sewer. So all of the activity of the game is going to happen in that sewer. Now, if the players leave that location, or more importantly, if a specific player leaves that location, essentially they've left the game. If you think about other games like football, baseball, soccer, they all have offsides and in-game lines to let you know when the players are playing and when they're just merely watching. So if a player leaves the location, they're kind of telling you, hey, I don't want to play the game right now. I just want to watch. That's totally fine. But you as the game master just need to have your clear border. And that's why you build a location. And you want to give lots of room for adventure. So I think going into a good 2-hour session, you should at least have 5 rooms prepared. And that's what we're going to do today. So naming your 5 rooms in your specific location is a great idea. Could be the guard room, the sleeping dragon room, the ooze room, whatever it is. Give it a good name. For my adventure today, I just did a bunch of sewer rooms. They were just simple concrete connecting rooms within a maze of sewers. But that's kind of what a sewer is, just a giant underground maze of tunnels and rooms with drains and lots of water coming through the concrete. So basically, each room looked pretty similar, with a couple of exceptions. So just to keep it simple, I just called it room 1, room 2, room 3, and so forth. But you can get as creative as you want. Now, after you've named the rooms, a good idea is to draw a map showing how each room connects to the other. Now, a really quick way to do this, let's see if I can do this real quick. Let's do a whiteboard. Yeah, so I'm going to show you a whiteboard example of how I make my maps, at least in my head. Now, if you don't want to do it this way, you can do it the good old-fashioned way and actually draw out the map yourself. Like you could actually get the grid lines and draw out the full map. That's fun. Takes a little bit extra time, but you can do it that way as well. This is taking a little bit longer than I thought. I'll just take a sip of tea. Okay, here we are. So this is just a quick way that I draw my maps. So I do room 1, and room 1 connects to room 2. There's an entrance and exit. Now, room 2 is unique in that it has 2 doors. It connects to room 3 and room 4, and only from room 4 can you get to room 5. But then there's a secret door from room 1 to room 3. That's a very simple map, just to kind of help you get an idea of how simple it can be to draw your maps. At least in my head, this is how it looks. Okay? So let's go back to... Okay, back to the session planner. Now, you're familiar with the card decks. You know that there's barrier rooms, negotiations, traps, and conflicts. And you also might ask, when do we use rewards? Reward rooms are a gift from the game master. You should use them not too often, but when the players really need them. Just in case you're wondering, if I ever pull a Joker card, that tells me it's time to do a reward room. Now, you can roll a 1d4 to choose which kind of room each of these 5 are going to be, or you could just you know, go one by one after the other. Okay? Okay. Now, okay. Now, let's see, just a reminder, barriers are, well, they're barriers. They're usually neutral forces. They don't care about the sojourners. They're walls, pits, guards, even guards, NPC guards. A lot of times they're just defense guards. Even if they're goblins, they're just trying to protect their property or not let anybody in or sound the alarm. They're not really an aggressive, advancing force like the conflicts might be. So that's a little bit of distinction. Oftentimes barriers can just be illusions, like a hidden door or something like that. Anything that's blocked, locked, or broken, collapse, mudslide, a giant sleeping dragon could be a barrier. Really, barriers need to be solved by players getting around them, over them, under them. Okay. Now, negotiations are unique in that with the barrier, you might actually have a plan of how the players can get around it. For example, if it's a raging river, well, you could fly over it. You could try to swim across it, maybe with some difficulty. You could hire a ferryman to take you across or you could take the long way around. With negotiations, a lot of times you may not actually have the answer. For example, if you have an NPC that's very powerful, let's just say it is a dragon, there's no way the players can defeat the dragon, but the dragon doesn't really want to fight. It just wants to talk or wants something. It wants a negotiation. That negotiation could be anything the players come up with. In other words, it's very creative. It's a creative space in which the players can play. Same thing with puzzles. You might design a puzzle or a trap or a riddle, a strange magic box, and you just let the players go crazy on being creative on how they're going to solve this negotiation encounter. And that's the fun part about it. So the point is, if you don't have an answer to the negotiation room, don't worry, because the players will come up with one for you. And of course, the highest number usually wins the negotiation. If they roll low on the negotiation goes bad, and it probably turns into a conflict. Who knows? Now, the third room would be a trap room, also characterized by the spade. And traps are basically no-win situations. Either way, the players are going to lose something. They lose health or they lose inventory. They lose an NPC or they lose all the ability to cast magic. They are cursed with only speaking in frog, or they are allergic to frogs for the rest of their life. They're just basically no-win situations, traps, hazards, tricks. They can go through the room, but they got to walk through miles of acid and be burned. It's basically a way for you, the game master, to drain the resources of characters. So that leads to question, what kind of resources can you drain? Well, like I said, they could be health points, could be inertia points, it could be the ability to cast spells, it could be inventory, it could be the ability to roll a particular ability score. For example, maybe if all their strength is gone, they can no longer roll strength checks. They automatically fail them. In other words, this is your opportunity to use the whole character sheet to set a trap for the players, then see how they respond. Basically, you do want to give them choices, right? You want to give them the choice. You don't want to force them into the trap. You want them to make the choice to go through the trap and take the damage. Now, the fourth room is a conflict room. And conflicts are very simple. They're very direct, straightforward. They're usually very territorial. The players want something and the conflict wants the exact same thing. It could be the players want to go through the tunnels and the spiders want to protect their tunnels. Well, that's a conflict. Can't have both. It could be the boss wants to open a portal and the players don't want the boss to open a portal. That's a conflict. They're very direct, very straightforward. And oftentimes it's the final boss room. It's usually the reason for the quest. In the example, this would be a room in which the magic cello sits in a altar about to be sacrificed from some crazy snake cultist. Well, the players don't want that. They want to retrieve the cello so they can get paid. So that's a conflict. And that's a good example of a conflict room. Again, they're very straightforward. Oftentimes they are combat, but not all the times. It could just be an argument. It could be a parlay. They could decide, hey, we'll take the cello off your hands and we'll do a favor for you. And therefore, you're elongating the quest into a different avenue of the quest. Either way, the conflict is a big question of what the players will do. And that's, that should also be said again. Barriers, negotiations, traps, conflicts, even rewards. It doesn't matter what room it is, you are offering the players choices, and then you're respecting the choices the players make. And of course, the last kind of room, if you need it, is a reward room. It's got treasure in it, it's got rest, safety, helpful NPC, or a revelation, like a big, discovery of the plot. It's an opportunity for the players to feel like they're part of a big story. All right, great. So we did the explanation. Let's get into making the room. So each time you get a room, you decide which of the 4 rooms or 5 room it's going to be. And you roll a d10 and a d6. So a d10 is going to be the first number and d6 is going to be the second number. Now, I might say that the d10 are hard and fast rules that I've established at making an encounter. But when you roll the d6, you're going to notice that it could be any sort of description that your imagination could think of. I just came up with 6 examples so that we had something to work with. So if you roll a d10 and you roll a 1, that clues you to create an observation in the room. You're just building the room. So for example, it's room number 1. We're in a sewer room number 1. And I'm going to put a door coming in and a ladder going down. And it's going to be, I need to decide it's a barrier room. There's going to be it's basically a barrier to entry. Well, I roll a 1 observation. And if I roll a 1 on the d6, dark. I'm just going to write next to it. It's a dark room, total pitch black. Well, what's the barrier then? Barrier is players are going to have to use torches. They're going to have to use light. They're going to have to come up with something. Or they're going to have to fumble around in the dark. Totally fine. Now, what if I roll a 4? Oh, I put a pit. That's the pit. So the giant pit in the way. And since it's a barrier room, I'm thinking, okay, that pit needs to be a barrier. It needs to be a giant pit, impassable, where there's, stuff at the bottom of the pit. Now my imagination is starting to pick up what's at the bottom of the pit. How big is this pit? Do you see how I just came up with 2 words, observation and pit? I mashed those together into a barrier room, and now you have a lot of ideas coming to play. And you get more ideas when you understand your players. For example, if I know the ninja character loves to do like all kinds of cool stealthy stuff, I might say it's a pit. You could probably jump across. It's big enough to jump across for some of you. The ninja might want to actually jump across. Or if I know that someone's looking for a particular magic item, I might hide a magic item at the bottom of the pit and say something sparkles at the bottom of the pit. It's all very exciting stuff. Cool. So you got the observation. What if you roll a 2? Well, a 2 just clues you in to put a discovery in the room. Discoveries are a very interesting part of encounters in rooms. So a discovery could be a light source. It could be food. It could be a water source. It could be treasure. It could be a new NPC, or it could be a secret door. And again, these are just examples, and they're very basic examples. If in your particular campaign, you're in the middle of the Feywild and they're inside a mushroom house and you roll a discovery, maybe you should add one of those numbers on the D6 as a discovery for one of the specific players as to who they're related to, which particular Fey Lord or Fey Lady they are related to. You could do something like that. Again, the 2 just generates your mind to say, ooh, make sure to put a discovery in this room. Okay? Now, you're probably asking like, well, how many of these items do I put 1 through 10 in the same room? No, that's way too much. My general rule is put 3 details in the room. Okay? So roll that D10 3 times and just pick the top 3. Okay? So now what if you roll a 3? That's a knowledge. Now, a knowledge, it's just my particular, I love game mastering this way. You don't have to, but I like my players to be steeped in the lore and the world building of the world I've created in Bonsarl. So I think that if my sojourners are in the world, they probably know a couple things about the world, and this can help give them clues and help the players feel like they're part of a story. So the knowledge would be something simple as they find a way to learn about the gods and the blessings, or learn about demons and curses, or magic and power. Usually this is done through books. I think books are a great way to learn, and so I include a lot of books in my game. If you roll a 5 on the d6, you might learn something about the sewers. It could be like a little plaque or like a little map of the sewers. You know how they have, and sometimes they have these buildings. You could do something like that. So um, have fun with knowledge. It's a bit open-ended, but it's basically your clue to say, hey, give the players some free information, or at least give them access to the information. They might put it in their inventory and use it later. You never know. Okay. Ooh, number 4. If you roll a 4 on the d10, and then you roll a d6, you want to figure out 1 through 6 right there. A risk is basically cluing you as a game master. It's time to turn up the heat in this room. Maybe the risk is a predator within the room. If it's a sewer, I'm going to probably put some leeches or maybe some zombie sewer rats, something like that. Now, in my particular example, I rolled for cult. There was a cult present, a snake cult in one of the rooms, and that was the risk. Now, the players heard the snake cultist whispering. They did not have to explore it. They didn't have to go after it. They could have just let it go. But again, I am a game master, and my job is to present problems and choices and let the players make the choices and let them solve the problems the way they want to. And again, your job is to create problems and let the players create solutions. Your job is to present choices and let the players make their choice. So I presented some cultists, and they didn't just jump in and like start, attacking. They were a little more sneaky. They didn't even know the sojourners were there. They were just present. Okay. You could do bandit sneaking. You could do bandits attacking. You could do bandits robbing. You could do a trap set. There could be it could be a natural trap, like a hazard, or it could let the players know that the villain is watching them, like a floating eyeball, keeping tabs on what the players are doing. It could be some kind of deadly danger, and when I say deadly danger, I mean present to the players a very scary outcome, such as if you're in the swamp, maybe like describe a whirlpool or quicksand. Like you're not going to survive if you're at the bottom of a quicksand. It's just not going to happen. So it's definitely telegraphing to the players that this is very dangerous. One of the risks of going into any dungeon or forest or dangerous place is getting lost and confused. So if you roll a 4 on the d10 and you roll a 6, it basically means, yeah, I'm sorry, but the players have to roll an 18 or higher not to get lost. It's so confusing in this place. Again, these 6 examples are just off the top of my head. You can use them. If you want to fill in the blanks with some other ideas, go for it. More power to you. Now, if you roll a 5, that's a clue for, add some rewards in this room. Some weapons, armor, scrolls, rations, coins, all kinds of stuff like that. If you roll a 6, it's a complication. And this is kind of fun. Something random happens, or, something that makes things difficult. If they're quietly resting in a room and all of a sudden a portal opens and out steps a demon, wow, okay, that's a complication. It may not be a fight. It may be. It's a complication. A monster just suddenly arrives. That whole monster arrives, that's the original Dungeons and Dragons encounter. If the players rested in a room, a monster would show up. So that's like a polite nod to the old school Dungeons and Dragons games in which the biggest complication in a dungeon is a monster shows up. Pests and fests, just like the way that sounds, monsters are typically out to eat you, but pests, they just they're like insects and rats. They just kind of live in the area. Maybe they're goblins. They're just living and they're making things worse. They're tearing up your food and putting out your fire and giving you all sorts of infections, things like that. 6.4, that's an interesting one. An injury occurs. And so basically, when I think of this, I think I'm going to change the story by giving the players an injury. Usually, if this is a dangerous place, for example, if they're climbing down a jaggedy cliff across some rough waves and near a reef by the seaside, it is very likely that someone's going to get hurt. It just, it's the hazards of the job. So I think it's fair every once in a while to just roll. Does anyone take damage? Does anyone get an injury? And damage sometimes is kind of boring. So give them an injury, broken leg, broken arm, because that usually means they can't move as fast or they need help or they can't attack with their weapon. It just creates problems. Again, use this very cautiously, but the way I do it at my table is I describe the dangers of where the players are at so that everyone at the table understands this is not a safe place. You're walking around through the dark, lurking sewers. Every step you step upon slime and sludge. You can feel your boots slipping underneath you as you grasp in the darkness for something to hold on to. And then I say, everyone roll a dexterity check. The low number is the loser, and the lowest number suffers an injury. Do a little damage, roll some damage dice, and say, for 1d4 days, your movement is reduced down to 1 point, or you can only move half as much because your ankle sprained. It creates more dynamic in the story. It also gives opportunity for players who have healing spells to use them. So that's how you can use that example. Okay, so let's go down to number 7, monsters. It's very straightforward. It's one of the best parts of the game. What's in the room? It's a monster. There's goblins, there's oozes, demons. You can tell I don't have a comprehensive list of monsters here. These are just the top 6 that came to my head. But believe it or not, I mean, honestly, I use ghouls a lot. I use stingbats a lot. I love demons. I love oozes. So you can just fill in the blanks for your top favorite 6 monsters. If you roll an 8 on the D10, that is an interaction with an NPC. So again, this can be incredibly various on who is there. There could be a prisoner NPC, a hostile NPC, a friendly NPC, a needy NPC, hungry. It could be anyone in the game. But basically, it's your clue. If you roll an 8, it's your clue. Hey, it's time to introduce an NPC in this room. If it's a hazard, on a 9, you roll a hazard. There's a door that's stuck, a pit, a slide, insects collapse. The difference between a hazard and a monster, a hazard is not a trap. It's not insidious. It's not trying to hurt anybody. It's just a dangerous part of going on an adventure. If it's a jungle, for example, maybe it's an insect that bites you. Maybe it's quicksand. Maybe it's just the sweltering heat, everyone roll a constitution save or pass out, stuff like that. Okay. And then number 10 is the most difficult, for it is a mystery. And like the puzzle encounter, like the negotiations, mysteries, you do not have to have the answer to. You just put it there, let the players make the choice and see what happens. So I might put a key in the room, see what they do. Do they take it? Maybe it opens the door. I don't know. I put a fairy in the room. I don't know what the fairy wants. We'll find out. I put a mysterious box in the room. The players may not go for the box. I bet you they will. And we'll find out when we get there. And the NPC, yes, can also be a mystery. Maybe it's a prisoner. Maybe it's a shape-shifting werewolf. I don't know. If you roll a 10, that's your clue to add a little bit of mystery into this room. Now, at the end of all that explanation, let's go back. When you're designing your room, you're building 5 locations, right? And the first room, let's just say it's a trap room, okay? And then you roll a 2, 5, and a 7, which means a 2 would be, a discovery. And then 5 would be a reward. Oh, this is a nice room. Cool. And then a 7 would be a monster. Okay, great. So in this room, there's something to discover, there's a nice little reward, and there's a monster. Those are my 3 details in this room. So actually, it's a pretty dynamic room. Now I'm going to actually roll the d6. The discovery, let's say it's a water source. They're thirsty. Discovery of a underground river. And they're thirsty and they need some water. That's good. The reward is going to be, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put I'm going to put a nice jewel at the bottom of the river. Large jewel. And of course, let's move that over there. Large jewel. It's going to be the reward. Okay. And then the monster. I'm just going to make one up. I think it's going to be it's going to be like a river choker. This little like gangly looking guy. He's all skinny and everything. He likes to hang out by rivers while people are drinking and then just reach up and choke them. And he uses the jewel, or let's say it's a nasty creature. It uses the jewel to lure its food. That's kind of a trap. Yeah, that works out. That's kind of a trap. Yeah, definitely. So you see how that works? I just rolled 3 times and I rolled the d6 to figure out, and I have a wonderful room. That's going to be quite an encounter. I don't know what the players are going to do. Maybe they negotiate with the choker. Maybe they kill it. Maybe they don't get the jewel. Maybe they get the jewel and the choker never shows up. I mean, that could happen. Anything's possible with the roll of the dice. Maybe they get on the river and they float down it to find another route. So they could go anywhere. So let's do it one more time so you can see. The second room is going to be, let's do a negotiation. Negotiation. And I'm going to roll let's see, a 6, 8, and a 9. 6, 8, and 9. Now, what was a 6 again? That was a complication. Okay, let's see. Complication would be, let's do pests. I like pests. Where'd it go? Complication of, let's see, and they're underground. Let's say zombie rats. Yuck. It complicates the game. There's like, they show up during a rest. It's just terrible. Okay, and 8 would be a interaction with the NPC and a hazard. Let's just say they find we'll do needy NPC. The NPC is actually running from the rats. Okay, and then a hazard would be a locked door. I love it. All right, so a needy NPC. Guess we better give him a name, Paul. Running from rats leads to locked door. So how is that a negotiation? Well, it's kind of a puzzle. The door's locked. What does the NPC want? There's many ways to solve it. So it's not outright combat. They may not fight the rats. That doesn't seem clear. But really, it's a puzzle that needs to be solved. Okay? All right, let's see. So that's basically 2 examples. I think that's enough. So when you're going through all that, you have enough to build a wonderful room. Again, you get 5 rooms. You roll this 3 times. You have 3 details. And let me tell you the real secret. The more often you do this, the more your mind is going to be filled with all these ideas so that when a player does something you don't expect, it's almost like your mind's going to remember, these are the kinds of NPCs I like to play. These are the kinds of hazards I like to add. All the lights go out. These are like the monsters I like to use. Your mind will actually keep a record of the things that you like to do as a game master and that your players like to do as well. For example, you notice I like to mess with light and darkness quite a bit. I love to mess with infection, rot, disease, slime, zombie rats. That's what I like to do. Those are how my games usually run. You as a game master will figure out your top 6 observations, your top 6 discoveries, your top 6 risks, and you can add your own in that. Okay? Now, I'm going to quickly go through the rest of these examples just so you have something, these are just tools you can use on the side. All right, rules for prayer magic. This is just something I like to do. If your source of magic is not your mind, if it's another person, like a warlock with his patron or a priest with her goddess, you might want to roll 2d6 to determine how well the relationship is going. For example, if you roll a 2, it may mean that you did something to offend the patron, and so you're unable to cast spells until some sort of penance is made, until you make up and, get back on good terms with your god. If you roll a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it means everything's good, no change. 3 and 4, you can cast spells without your spellcasting bonus, so straight 0. If you have a 10 or 11, you can cast spells with an added bonus. That's kind of cool. I like number 12. If you roll a 12 on 2d6, very rare, you can spend no points to cast spells for that entire day. And roll daily. You can just roll this every day to see what kind of relationship you have as a cleric, paladin, or warlock with your magic. And you can even do this as a druid, you know? And you can use this anytime a player does something to offend their god or their patron or nature. You can have them roll 2d6 to see if the god, patron, or nature is upset with them and therefore take away their casting abilities. It's kind of fun. It makes prayer magic a little different than arcane magic. Remember, stamina points are simply health points. They're just simple ways to, these are just tools you can take away from players or give back to players to help make the game more exciting. What I do is when a Sojourner drops to 0 stamina points, I'll roll a 1d6 to determine the outcome. Of course, at 0, you can't take any more actions. You're unconscious or something. Here's some factors for healing. Does it take rest? Maybe it takes 1d4 hours or days to rest. Maybe it's medical treatment, like, stop the bleeding or put a sling on, or even cast healing spells. Sometimes that's a treatment. Basically, I always usually roll against a target of 12. Sometimes it takes materials to heal, extra bandages, extra potions, extra herbs, medicine kits, whatever. But the point is, if it takes materials, it's a consumable material, meaning it gets deducted from your inventory. And if it's expert care, that means no one in the party can help. It must require an NPC or a specific sojourner trained in the art of healing or specific magic. Again, these are just 4 factors to consider for healing. Play with them as much as you want. If you want different kinds of wounds, this is a D6 chart for wounds. Inertia points are simple like magic points. Again, if you drop to 0, you're out of the game for now. Heart points are, not used too often, but I like to keep them ready. Basically the same thing. If you drop to 0, you can't take actions. Just keep in mind to have magic spells limited in the game. They can offset the game quite a bit, especially when you consider that you have heart, inertia, and stamina points. Okay. I just want to show you that the Sojourner's Guide to Inertia, this is a list of spells, different pathways. So I've invented 4 pathways to take basically like a spell casting class. So if you take pathway 1, that is summon elementals as your beginning spell, and then you learn wild shape. Then you learn blight. Then you learn bark skin. Then you learn moonbeam. So you basically you go up the ladder. Now, if you want to do something random, I've itemized them 1 through, is it 20? I did, it's 20. So you can roll a d20 to get a random spell off of that pathway. And of course, if you roll the same one, they roll a 16 twice during a level up, you can re-roll, okay? If you want to make your own spell, just remember to give it a title, duration, a range, and a cost, and of course, an effect. Okay. Here's pathway 2. And it was only just today that I realized these are 4 directions. So I gave it north, south, east, west. I think that's a really good idea. You could also do spring, summer, winter, fall, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, earth, fire, wind, water. There's lots of 4 patterns that I like to use. So I wrote all these spells. Most of them are from like D&D 5e and old school essentials. So there's Ball of Fire. It's a funny one. A lot of them, don't forget that they cost inertia points. Some like Fireball cost 1d4 points, so it's random. Tentacles from the Deep, it costs 1 stamina point and an inertia point. So this one's actually costs you a little bit of health. Okay. Most of them are going to cost just 1 inertia point. And of course, you as a spellcaster can increase. So for example, I want to do Burning Hands. It's 1 turn. It can be near. It costs 1 inertia point. And in this case, after casting the spell, fire bursts from your hands, dealing 1d10 damage per point. So if I want to do more damage, I just have to spend more points. And this is pretty cool. Burning Hands explodes on a 10. That means if you roll a 10 on the dice, you get to reroll. It's pretty cool. And take the extra damage. Okay, so those are all the spells. And Pathway 5. Create your own spells using this format. Name, duration, range, cost, and what is the effect? What happens after you cast the spell? If you want an example of durations, it's self or engaged. It's close, near, far, and distant. So there's 4 ranges. By the way, engaged can be thought of as melee or just close enough to touch. Close you actually have to kind of step in to touch. Range would be, oh, sorry, silly me. That is range. Okay, duration would be either turn, round, hour, or day, or forever. Some of the spells last. Actually, I say until dispelled. So it costs 1 turn. If it costs 1 turn, it basically like happens on your turn and ends on your turn. But if it lasts for more than 1 turn, you would say 1d turn, 1d2 turns, 1d4 turns, 1d5 turns, whatever. And rounds would be an entire round around the game table. Okay, cost would be, usually it's 1 inertia point. And then per effect. You can get creative with how many points to spend. It can be a negotiation with players. Effect, I always say after casting the spell, meaning they have to roll the spell correctly in order for the spell to go off. ... Something happens. That's a spell. Okay. Cool. Now the rest of these are just random tables. Have fun. D100 epic items. What does Arcane Lockpick do? I don't know. What is the Bardic Drum of Inspiration? These are just like random stuff. The Luckbringer's Coin. Just fun stuff to do to make it up. These are mundane survival items just because I think mundane is cool. What are you going to do with a poncho? What are you going to do with a pocket knife or a folding shovel or duct tape? Have fun with that. D20 spell scrolls. Fireball, lightning bolt, magic missile. Just, if you need a list of spell scrolls, there you go. Here is another way to build encounter. This was an earlier edition of the session planner I just took you through. It's just showing you the power of this model. You can put almost anything in here. In this case, observation, I have 10 observations. And it's reminding me, describe the light, the sound, the movement, describe the doors, describe the NPCs. Make sure to include observation in your games. I like you to roll random to build the encounters, but I want you to remember as a game master that you should be describing the observations to the players. If there's a treasure chest in the middle of the room, describe it. If there's 3 doors in the room, describe them. Those are the things the players observe. Knowledge are what do the players know? When you walk into the room, you know that the bartender serving coffee is a really nice guy and gives to the poor. That could just be a piece of knowledge that the players have. A lot of times with knowledge, I don't have the players roll for it. They just know that this is poison ivy and it causes really bad itching. You don't have to roll for that. But if it's a rare plant and you don't know if it causes itching, well, let's roll an intelligence check or wisdom check to see if you know. Okay. Again, you can do discoveries, you can do mysteries, risks, rewards, costs, complications, NPC interactions, monsters and motivations. These are all just random tables to give you ideas to add more to your game. For example, if you use this chart and you roll a 10 with a 4, it's got a dragon. Oh, that's cool. Now you got to add a dragon to that area. Again, it's just more tables for your enjoyment. If you ever want to go through the immortal forces of Bonzarl, this is just an example of the pantheon of how the world was created in my world. It's just good lore to read through. It's fun stuff. It's just the different gods and powers and makes the world feel real. Okay, so you can go through all that. And I think that might be it. Oh, now here's one more thing. This is just a reminder, the Oracle. If you need to ask a question. This is a D20 interpretation chart. I should make that a little bigger. So if you have a target, if they hit the target, like if it's a target of 12, that's a success, right? But just to let you know that if it's a target -1, for example, target -1 would be an 11, I give the players the success at a cost. Or if they roll a +5 to the success, like a 17, when they should have got a 12, I'll give them a little bonus. Or if they roll a +10, like a 22, I might give them a bonus and an advantage, you know. But anything under -2 is a failure. Under -5, failure with a penalty. You know, you get the idea. You can create variance, but you don't have to do that. It could just be, did you hit the target or did you not hit the target? Did you pass or fail? Did you succeed or did you fail? It could just be simple, but this is just an example of how variant you can be with the dice rolls. Of course, example targets would be, you know, 3 or higher is something super simple, like you can't fail it. Most of the time, I'm going to go to 9, 12, and 15. Easy, standard, hard. I'll bolden that because that's the most popular ones. Just add 3 to increase challenge or subtract 3 to decrease challenge, or you could have advantage. A lot of bonuses, I don't add more than 3 just because the math starts to get a little funky then. If you're using resist rolls, you must always roll at the number or under to succeed. But you know, we don't have to use resist rolls. That's just something I'm messing with right now. D12 NPC attitudes, D100 more mundane loot, D100 magical effects. You touch a magic button and it doubles the damage for the rest of the day. Bam, look at that. And come up at the end of this, it's just a lot of like random stuff that you could just go through. So again, I said it's 64 pages. Make sure you print it out. Being smart, don't use all the paper in your house. And hope you roll a D100 there and get a free spell book. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something. And as always, may your story continue.